Hey cookie lovers, I'm Stone from the Mountaintop Kitchen. Today we're creaming cold butter, blending in earthy matcha, folding in melty white chocolate chunks, and baking up New York City-style giants with crisp edges and gooey green centers. Finished with a strawberry sparkle and toasted black sesame crunch. Let's bake it big. So welcome back to the Mountaintop Kitchen. If you haven't been here before, I'm Frank, and if you have been here before, well, you know who I am. We are going to be making white chocolate and matcha cookies today. Now, I spent an entire semester in Japan teaching, and while I was there, I had time to take some cooking classes, and it was great. So, if you haven't had matcha before, it has a grassy, that kind of sounds bad, a grassy, savory, umami, savory flavor to it. It has kind of some nutty notes to it. It's awesome. So we're going to be using this organic matcha that I got. Now it is hard to find sometimes in certain places. I got mine at Costco, and it seems to be pretty abundant here in Mexico where I'm at. But I do understand in some places it's hard to get. Maybe online might be a good option if you can't find it in your grocery store. Okay, so we are going to, oh, and by the way, if you want to see some of my photos from my semester in Japan, you can check out my Substack newsletter. The description box below has the link. So just go there and take a look, as well as the full recipe. So you don't want to miss that, because we give tips and tricks along the way that we might not have here in the video, because we're trying to make this as short as possible. We're going to start by going ahead and sifting all of our dry ingredients together. So here we have 450 grams, or about 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour. We're going to throw that into our sieve. We also have about 15 grams of matcha, and that's about 2.5 tablespoons. Now, matcha, you can use as much or as little as you like. This 15 grams for this recipe will give it a nice balanced flavor. If you like a lighter green and a lighter flavor, you just put less in. If you want a more intense flavor, you just put a little bit more in, and it's a lot greener too. Okay, and we also have some salt. We have about 3/4 teaspoon of a fine sea salt here, or you can use a kosher salt or Himalayan. Just try to stay away from table salt. It's a little harsh with that iodine in it. Okay, and we also have about 2 teaspoons of baking powder. So we're going to throw all that in there. Make sure we get it all out. And we're just going to sift it all together. These are our dry ingredients. And if you have any little lumps like we do with some matcha here, we're just going to work those through with our hand. We don't want to lose any of that. And that's that. Okay, so we have our dry ingredients sifted together. Let's move on with our wet. Now this recipe is so easy. There are only like 9 ingredients, and a couple of those are just the salt and the baking powder. So let's move on. We'll get the wet ingredients together, and we're going to have cookies in no time. Okay, let's move on to the wet ingredients. Now, when you're making New York style cookies, those big chunky ones, it's really important that you start off with cold cubed butter. So that's what we have here. We have about 2 sticks, or 226 grams of cold cubed butter. That's about 1 cup. So let's plop that into our mixing bowl. Let's try to get it all in the bowl. That would be helpful. But if not, just pick it up for an errand. Okay, and we have some brown sugar. So we have about 3/4 cup and 2 tablespoons, about 180 grams of light brown sugar. So let's throw that in there. Okay, I bake with grams. So as I'm developing a recipe and trying to get that perfect sweetness or spread or chunkiness or whatever I'm aiming for, I do that in grams. So the measurements then in imperial measurements might need to add a tablespoon, add 2 tablespoons to a cup or something like that. So that's why you might see some odd measurements on the imperial side. So then I have some sugar. So I have about 100 grams of granulated sugar. That's about 1/3 cup, 1/3 cup plus 1 tablespoon. So let's plop that in. And we just want to mix this on slow, because the butter is very cold and we don't want it popping out. So I'm going to just pulse it a little bit until it gets going. And once it does, I can turn it up. Otherwise, these cubes of butter might go flying out. And you want to mix this for about 2 or 3 minutes. You do not want fluffy butter sugar mixture as we do in cakes and other cookies, because we want to keep that chunkiness to the cookies. So it's really important to have cold butter and to keep it cold and not get it super creamy or warm. So here we go. There comes a piece of butter out. It goes back in. So we'll be back in 2 minutes. Okay, it's been about 2 minutes, and let me show you what this looks like. I'm just going to use my hands. They're washed. You can see it's not really creamed. It's more chunky and still with some pretty big chunks of butter in there. That's what you want. Okay, let's go ahead and put 1 egg in. If you do get any eggshell in, just fish that out. We didn't, so we're lucky. Okay, there we go. So we have the egg mixed in. Now we're going to bring our dry ingredients that we already sifted together, and I'm just going to whisk them to get them, you know, a little bit more unified looking until it looks like we have one uniform color in here. All the matcha and the flour and the salt and the baking powder are all well blended together. And there we have it. A nice pale green color, but I can assure you once we get this done, these cookies are going to be really green. So I'm just going to go ahead and dump all of it in right now. Get it all in there, okay? And remember, when you put flour into any dough, you don't want to over mix. Well, unless you're making bread, you go a little bit longer, but for delicate cakes and cookies, we don't want to develop the gluten. So we're just going to get it pulsed, because you don't want your flour flying out, as it already has a little bit. And as soon as it's all in together, we can go ahead and stop. And there we go. We have our cookie dough ready. So I'm going to do a bit of cleanup here. I'm going to start making our cookie dough. Well, we do have a couple more things to add in. All right, I've moved my cookie dough over into a bigger bowl so it's easier for me to mix up with the white chocolate. And I have a good quality. It's really important to get a good quality white chocolate. I've tried many of them and some of them just are not good. Okay, this one is really good, has a really high cocoa butter content. This is Lindt brand, and that's what I like to use. Now I've chopped it up, it comes in a bar form, and I've chopped it up to about almost chocolate chip size. So I have 200 grams here, or about 1 1/4 cups of chopped up white chocolate. We're just gonna dump that in and mix it up with our hands and get it well integrated. This combination of matcha and white chocolate is so yummy. When I was in Japan, I tried matcha donuts, matcha cakes, matcha drinks, matcha ice cream. Everything is matcha there. So as I was tasting those things, I was always trying to assess what's the balance of the matcha, what makes a good matcha dessert or drink. And I tried to take that knowledge and bring it into this cookie. So I think this is the right balance. When we bake with breads, we usually use baker's percentages, where we always measure everything as a percentage back to the total weight of the flour. So, but I like to do that also with my cookies and cakes and everything else. So I've come up with about 3.5 to 4% of the flour weight as matcha is what I like. I think that's a good combination. And as you can see, it's gotten much greener now that we've mixed everything together. So this is really great. It smells really good. Oh, this umami savory plus the sweet, the nuttiness, the grassiness of the, I think grassy sounds kind of bad, but actually in matcha, it works out really well. So we have that all mixed up. And what we're going to do now is we're going to form this into cookie balls and then get them into the freezer for a while. So let me move my trusty measuring device here, my kitchen scale. And you can make these cookies any size that you like. You'll just have to adjust the baking time. I think these are New York style cookies, so they're still going to be somewhat big and chunky, but when I make matcha cookies, I like to make them a little bit on the smaller side. So we're gonna make these about 100 grams each. And you can see the size in a minute. I'll end up with probably about 10 cookies altogether. So if you don't have a scale, you can just eyeball the dough, split it and split it and split it again until you get 10 clumps of dough and make your cookies. So, but we're gonna go ahead and weigh these now. So I'm just gonna, you don't want to compress really hard either because you're gonna end up with a really dense cookie. So I'm just gonna look, see if I got 100. I have 84. Just put some more here until I have 100. And then I'll clump it all together. A little bit more. Okay, there's 100. So I'm just gonna scoop all this up and get it all together. If it doesn't keep falling out of my hand, and not compress it too hard. Any pieces of chocolate come out, just push them back in. And then just put them, you don't want them to be perfect. These are artisan cookies. They have to look a little ununiform. So we're just gonna put those into our pan over here and just keep going. Now, I'm sure you don't wanna see me do 10 cookies, so I'm just gonna do a couple. That's a little bit big. Now you can do this 100 grams like I am, 120, 150, just bake them longer the bigger they are. A little bit, add a minute or two here and there. Okay, all right, that's about 100. And I'll go ahead and get these done and be right back. Okay, done forming the dough balls. Now my dough weight total was about 1,200 grams. So since I made each of my dough balls 100 grams, that came out to 12 cookies, not 10. So if I'd made them bigger, obviously I would have less cookies. But so for this recipe, if you stick to around this size, you should be able to get about 12 cookies out of 1,200 grams of dough. Okay, so now that we have our dough balls formed, we're gonna pop these into the freezer for a few hours. You can do it overnight. I usually do it overnight, but we're just gonna pop them in for a few hours because again, these are chunky cookies. We don't want the butter getting warm, so we need to get them into the freezer quickly. We're gonna cover this with some cling wrap and get them into the freezer. Okay, so we've chilled these for a couple hours and they're ready to go into the oven. Now, these will be pretty tall. They don't spread very much. So if you would prefer a flatter cookie, then you'll just want to press down on these before you put them in to be chilled and just make them more of a puck shape. But we want ours nice and tall, so we're going to leave them like this. And before we stick these in the oven, I'd like to go over some of the products that we've used just so that you can see what we have here. So this is the matcha that we used. We did get this at Costco. It's organic and it's 454 grams. So I think it was about, I don't know, $15, something like that. And then the white chocolate that we use is the Lindt. It's really good quality. It's very creamy. And after these bake, we're going to put some melted white chocolate on top on half of them, and then crush up some of these freeze-dried strawberries to give a little bit of color and taste, a little bit of strawberry punch there. And on the other half, we're going to put some of this flaky sea salt. So let's get these into the oven, and then we're going to test them. Oh, and I should probably mention before we stick these in the oven, how long we're going to bake these and at what temperature. So you can see we have about, 8 here. You can put less on a sheet if you're worried about them spreading, but this recipe won't spread very much. But anyway, with these right here, we're going to bake these. If you're using a convection oven, we're going to bake these at 356 Fahrenheit or about 180 degrees Celsius for about 14 to 16 minutes, probably more towards the 16-minute time frame. And if you are baking in a conventional oven, we're going to bake these at about 392 F or 200 degrees Celsius for about 13 to 15 minutes. Again, probably more towards the 15 minutes. So now we'll go stick these in the oven. Okay, our cookies are out of the oven and they've cooled down and they are looking and smelling so good. You can see that the white chocolate that has come out to the outside of the cookie is nice and caramelized. And if you've ever had caramelized white chocolate, you know that it's even better than white chocolate. So we have both the caramelized chocolate on the outside and the white chocolate on the inside. This is going to be so great. I also have some white chocolate that I've melted that I'm going to drizzle on the tops of some of these. And I have 3 different toppings I'm going to use today. I have some crushed up. This is strawberry. It's freeze-dried. And I have some toasted black sesame. And I have some flaky sea salt. So these 3 will be toppings for today. I'm just showing you some options. You can use one or all, or you can just eat them plain because they are just as delicious. So before we start working on these, I also have a glass of milk, and I would like to ask you to like, subscribe, and share this video if you like this recipe. And if you haven't subscribed already, that little button is right down there. So I really do appreciate it. Okay, so let's go ahead and drizzle some of this white chocolate onto our cookies. Let's just start right here, and let's do a little bit across here, do a little bit across here, and a little bit across here. Do those 3. And then I'm going to put strawberries on these. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of strawberry here and there. This is looking so good. Okay, there we go. All right, then I'm going to put some more chocolate over here on this one, and this one, and this one. And here we're going to put on some black sesames. Look at that. Oh my God. I toasted these, so they're nice and nutty. Look at that, that's great. And then for these other 3, we're just going to put some sea salt on them. So just going to put some sea salt here, no chocolate on these, just a little bit of salt. And there you go. We have our cookies with the strawberry. We have our cookies with the black sesame toasted. We have our cookies with just the sea salt. Now, I have one over here that's plain, and I'm going to eat it right now. So let's break into this baby. Look at that. Oh my God. So these are really nice and crunchy. You can see they're kind of golden color in places on top there, and the bottoms are nice and golden colored. And they are so crunchy on the outside and so soft and chewy on the inside. Oh, it's so good. And the flavor, it's not very sweet at all. So the sugar content's just about right. And that matcha, it has that umami, kind of savory flavor, kind of nutty, kind of grassy, but not overly bearing. It is excellent with the white chocolate. The caramelized white chocolate on the outside and the white chocolate on the inside. These are awesome cookies. And I'm going to have a glass of milk. Cookies are always better with milk. Oh, and if you like this recipe, how about trying this one right up here? I think you're going to like it too. I'm going to keep eating. We'll see you next time on the Mountaintop Kitchen. Thanks for joining us today. Make these.